So you're talking earlier about your insecurity. So you come here, as we've already stated, you weren't exactly hailed, you weren't exactly applauded.
Yeah.
You then lose your first 2 games to underdog sides. What are you thinking at that point, Stephen?
I'm thinking, why did I take this job, Derek? If truth be told, you know, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is a little bit tougher than I expected.
You have insecurities at that point?
I, as I said to you, I'm far more comfortable. We always are plagued with self-doubt, but I am far more comfortable.
A composure?
I'm far more composed, you know, and I look at things in a slightly different manner now that I am at the age I'm at. So I was quite philosophical, and I've been, as I said to you, working at Brentford and doing my degree. I'm far more strategic in my thinking now. So, of course, losing the first couple of games was difficult, but I also was aware of how big a challenge it was going to be in terms of recruitment and getting the squad together. So I was realistic with it as well.
Of course, the technical director at the club, Gordon Strachan,
Yeah.
You knew Gordon when you were a player at Coventry. I think he was player assistant manager. How key was he in you coming here and indeed getting the job?
He was pivotal, Derek, because when I left Brentford in the summer, I'd done 4 years in the job. And I left the job with the idea of moving into more the technical sporting director position. That was my mindset. I'd actually spoken to a couple of American clubs about the potential of that during the season there. And with me, as I've made reference to my degree that I've done in my time at Brentford, and my experience as a coach and understanding, you know, how a manager operates, what support he needs, I felt that it was a good fit for myself. And then Gordon phoned me on this job, and the reality was that I still had a little itch. And so I met with John Nelms. We spoke a lot, you know, our kind of ideas aligned. And of course, with Gordon being here, it was a big attraction for myself. And I lean on Gordon a lot. You know, he's such a knowledgeable football man, and he's hugely supportive. But we also have some great meetings where he really stimulates thoughts. You know, he'll say things to me. I've encouraged him to be very frank on his appraisal of the team.
And he has been, has he?
And he has been. But I want that. I want that. I wouldn't have liked that as a young coach, but I want that now. And he really stimulates thought.
How frank?
As frank as he needs to be on anything. You know, whether it's a substitution he doesn't agree with, then I would want him to say to me. So
will he really put you in the spot? Why pick him? Why take him off? Not to
those extremes, but he'll talk a little bit about certain things that he's seen in the game that he thinks we can do better. And I'll ask him what he thought about certain decisions that I'd made in game.
Yeah.
And he'll be quite frank on them.
But you made a mistake there, Stephen, or you did well, Stephen?
And he's very, very complimentary when he needs to be complimentary about certain aspects of our performance. But equally, I want him to critique certain things because it's the only way you improve. And he stimulates thought, he stimulates the coaches to go and look at certain things. And I think it's a really healthy relationship. It's what I want from my technical director.
How frequent do you have those conversations?
We have them once a week. Myself, David Longwell, Gordon and John. And we go through the process of how we've prepared during the week, the game plan, what we've worked towards and the outcomes. And then we look at certain statistics and data that we continuously monitor and we talk about them. And I really enjoy them. I honestly do. And I think it is vital in the growth of the team, in the growth of me as a head coach, and the growth of the club.
I think it's to your credit, Stephen, that you're prepared to take criticism. You're actually welcoming frank opinions, even if it's a negative for you. But you're big enough that you're prepared to take that. You don't, you know, you've already stated you don't take the view, I know it all. You know, you're very experienced now, but it's a credit to you that you're still willing to take that. That could hurt. It's something that could hurt, something that could pierce.
It would have hurt me as a younger coach. There's no doubt about it. Oh, it would have hurt me. You know, you go into environments, and I've seen this a lot, where they won't challenge. They talk about this is a culture and an environment where we won't challenge. But the reality is a lot of the people within that environment or that business aren't ready for challenge. So they talk a lot about words, and that's what I was like as a younger coach. I wasn't ready to be challenged because I had the answers. I don't have all the answers, and I want to be challenged. I want to learn all the time. I'm only 52. There's still a lot of learning.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's what I say to Gordon. And Gordon's got an incredible knowledge, and he's really stimulated thoughts about certain things in our performance, and I'm grateful to him for that.
You know him particularly well, of course. Your family home's still Leamington Spa. Gordon's Leamington Spa as well. So would you have seen a lot of him socially as well?
We used to play golf.
Yeah.
Not regularly, and some of the time that I had out of football in the sporadic periods, I sometimes went into his academy. That obviously educates and supports young players, and I would go in there sometimes. So he was a guy that I leaned on. Also, when I had thoughts on the game, and I would speak to him about them, and we would sometimes meet for coffee. You've got to remember, Gordon was an idol of mine. I was an Aberdeen fan growing up.
I was going to touch on that later on, but that's incredible for you, isn't it?
It's incredible.
Because
I said to you earlier, Derek,
we were speaking off camera earlier about Eric Black.
Eric Black, who was another
Fantastic
idol.
man.
And of course Mark McGee, who I played golf with Gordon with a number of times. So this is like...
So as a kid you're watching these guys, you were a big lover of the Sir Alex Ferguson side, weren't you? So you're watching Gothenburg and all the glories. Never for once thinking there's going to be a day I'm playing golf with these guys.
So it's a little bit surreal for me. You know, my father was obviously from Fraserburgh. My father's family were all from the north, so there was the pool of that and the Sir Alec years, and of course Gordon was a hero, Mark and Eric, they were all great idols of mine, so it's a little bit surreal to be playing golf with them.
I was going to say, I mean, you're a great football person, had a brilliant career, but is the fan in you still there when you're in their company? Do you still feel a little bit kind of in awe?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I said to you, I was in a pub with Eric Black, and a guy came over and started talking to me about football, and he didn't know who Eric was. And I had to say to him, listen, you're speaking to the wrong guy here. This is the real star.
You were almost annoyed you didn't know.
Exactly.
Who was your favourite Aberdeen player?
When I was young, this is true, I was signed for Glasgow Rangers as a right winger. So Gordon was a huge...
A winger, Stephen?
Yeah, you wouldn't have believed that. I didn't really play central defence until I was 16. I was always a wide player and attacker. So I signed there, so of course, being that type of player, Gordon was a hero of mine.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're here, and obviously at the start of the season, you've got ambitions, you'll be thinking top six, but now, realistically, it's looking like survival. Is that accurate? Or have I been too harsh here?
No, I think that I never look too far ahead. You know, I think that the most important thing is that we improve and we pick up results along the way.
Yeah.
You know, we have to stay in the Premier League, we know that. But equally, January is another big window for us because the recruitment and process in the club is an area that we've had to significantly overhaul and improve.
Gary Piggott's just come in. You've still got Billy Kirkwood.
Absolutely.
And you've got David Longwell.
David Longwell, and we're moving towards a more data-driven type of recruitment process, something the club haven't worked towards before in the past. So we're trying to improve all of those areas, but it takes time. But the other thing, Derek, is time is not a commodity for a football manager, as you know.
No.
So you need to win certain games to get that time. So that's the challenge. You know, I want to be here, I want to grow and build a club, but I'm also aware that along the way I need to get results.
I was at Dens for the day you beat Celtic. Terrific performance, really good performance, well worth the victory.
Thank you.
I think too often in times like that, if Celtic and Rangers suffer a shock result, quite often there's more of a spotlight on their deficiencies as opposed to the opposition, and I thought that day Dundee were terrific. But I was also struck by how you were after that game, Stephen. I always thought you weren't getting carried away. There was no bombastic talk, and it was calm, it was measured. You were still realistic about it. But inside you must have been thinking, wow.
Of course I was extremely pleased, but again, like I said to you, Derek, I've been in football 35 years. That the one thing that I do know is that we can talk about a great tactical performance, but I'm a believer that we give the framework. The winning of games comes from the players. It really does come from the players. Of course, they have to have an idea and a way to work and a style within that, but the winning of it's with the players, and I genuinely believe that. I've talked to the players a lot about that. But also, you can't get too carried away. It's only one result, and I think from my experience it tells me that we have got so much work to do here, so much work. I see small steps in the right direction, but I never get carried away now, because I know that the difficult times can be just round the corner.
And it was a shame because even your win was overshadowed by Brendan Rodgers' comment afterwards about the Honda Civic, referring to, a playing squad of Honda Civics. I mean, how did you react when you saw that yourself as a manager? Were you quite stunned that he said that?
Listen, he's a hugely experienced manager, and actually Brendan was in my office prior to the game. We sat and had a coffee, because he's a manager that I do admire. And he's got a wealth of knowledge, so we spoke for some time, and I could sense in my office prior to the game that there was frustrations, that he wasn't entirely happy about certain things. So, was I absolutely shocked by that? Not completely. I think he had a number of issues and a number of concerns, but let's not forget what a great job he did.
So there's big pressures in keeping Dundee up. How do you deal with it, Stephen? I mean, you're up here without your family as well, which I think people should know. I think that's an aspect at times that I think probably people won't appreciate. You're a human being after all.
Of course.
Is that difficult for you being up here and your family are still down south?
Yeah, listen, I said to you, I'm a real family man, and I miss them enormously. And I spent the first 7 weeks up here in the hotel. And then I spent a number of months in Airbnb while I searched for the appropriate apartment. And during those first couple of months in Airbnb, it hit home to myself that being a football manager is a lonely experience at times. And when you go back to an empty house, it's not particularly good because you've got too much thinking time. So I made a real conscious effort and made a decision around that I would move back in with my mother at the age of 52, who lives in Dalgety Bay, and I stay there 4 or 5 days a week. Another 2
So is this so you could get your washing done?
Yes.
Get your dinners cooked? Yeah.
Yes, very much that.
Nothing wrong with that, Stephen.
And I stay with Barry Nicholson the other 2 or 3 nights of the week in Airbnb. So that's helped me. Also, I've made a conscious effort on another couple of things. Every Sunday now I meet my closest friends that I've been friends with for the best part of 40 years, and we meet every Sunday now for a bite to eat, which again, when I talk about the mental aspects of it, is really important. Every Thursday, if we're not training that day, which is generally our day off, I'll try and go into Edinburgh and spend a lot of time walking and treat myself to a nice lunch. All of these things, it's sometimes you don't realise how important these things are. You have to reward yourself. You have to take yourself away from the football. And I've really made a conscious effort. I'm reading a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I do a lot of things to try and distract me. Because if I'm honest, Derek, I open the training ground doors at 7 in the morning. And generally I'll leave.
Literally?
No, that's true. I open the doors at 7 in the morning. And I'm in there till 5:30, 6 o'clock most days. 11 hours a day I work to try and make things better. Now, I'm not wanting a pat on the back, but that's the truth. That is the truth. We work relentlessly, my staff equally. So we want to make things right, and we're working desperately hard. And I just hope we can get the opportunity to do that.
I have to ask, how did Mrs. Pressley feel about our boy coming back to stay with her at 52? Would you give you into trouble for no tidying your room or anything like that? No. No making your bed or anything like that? No.
She's really happy to have her little boy back. She really is. She really is. She's delighted, because my mother used to come to all my games. And then when I transitioned to a manager, equally she'd come to all the games. But when I've been in England, she's not had the opportunity to do that, and I think she's missed that. But
that's lovely, actually. In all seriousness, it's lovely, you know, just spending such time with your mum and whatever. And
absolutely, and it's one of the things. It's one of the real positives that my mother's not getting any younger, and I'm getting to spend a lot of really valuable time with her.
Is she quite critical?
No, not at all.
Does she watch you on TV, or does she?
She's not critical at all. She's a real worrier, my mother. She really is. She's such a caring person.
Does she fret over you if there's bad results?
Oh, yeah. And she's had to come off social media as well. You know, her mother, as a mother, she doesn't want to read some of the comments about her son. But that's the reality of it. But no, she's delighted to have her little boy back.
That's nice. That's nice. I mean, you know, prior to Dundee, you know, you'd fascinating stuff. You'd Fleetwood, you'd Paphos, you'd Carlisle United. I was looking at your Coventry City tenure, Stephen, and you know, I was speaking to, I've got a dear friend who's Coventry City daft, and I told him I was coming to see you, and he said, please tell Stephen I'm asking for him. Give him my thanks as a City fan. I've got huge respect for him, and I could see why when I looked at your record. You went down there, you won your first game, gave James Maddison his debut, and I noticed they name-checked you in Sky Sports the other night, Stephen, which I thought was a nice touch. But within a few weeks of getting the job, the club goes into administration, you get a 10-point deduction, you still keep them up. They then have a 10-point deduction for the start of the following season, you again keep them up. You're also playing at Northampton, 6 fields, everything's against you, and yet despite all of that, you're doing a remarkable job. So little wonder my pal saying, give him my best, because he's well thought of down here. That would mean a lot to you.
No, it does mean a lot, Derek, and I've got amazing memories about my time at Coventry. In the end, I lost my job, and rightly so. You know, I made a number of mistakes along the way, but there was also some real positive times there, and you know, the reason that they initially headhunted me was because of the job that I'd done at Falkirk in shaping and moulding and developing a young team. Now, they were a club that was going through some really difficult times. Financially, they didn't have great resource, but they had a good academy, and they had some good players within that academy, and they wanted me to bring through those young players, something that I take a lot of pride in, and I really enjoy doing, watching young people develop. And of course, within that time, I had the opportunity to bring through the likes of James Maddison, Callum Wilson, the Cyrus Christies of this world. You know, we had one of the youngest teams in the league, but also, again, I go back to recruitment. We made too many mistakes. At the time, we didn't have a correct recruitment structure and support in that area, and a lot was down to myself as manager, and I didn't know the English market well enough, and I made a lot of mistakes in the market, and in the end we struggled, and in the end the decision for me to lose my job was the correct decision. But equally, Derek, I will say this, that when I talked to you there about working from 7 till 6, it was the same at Coventry, but I didn't time manage away from football well enough, which I do much better now. Even in the international break, I try to take, you know, 3 or 4 days away to recharge. I was just constant there. And by the time I lost my job, I was dead on my feet. I was literally dead on my feet. For 2 years, I'd run myself into the ground, and I hadn't managed myself properly.
I think there's managers in Scotland that are overachieving at certain clubs, and you know, I think deep down managers will have a fear that they can only keep on doing that for so long and eventually it'll go the other way. Did you have a sense of that at Coventry, that you really were achieving far more, doing far better than the circumstances really should have allowed for you? Did you have a sense that at some point it's going to go the other way?
I probably had a chance, you know. I met, and I didn't push it enough. I met with Huddersfield when I was the Coventry City manager, and they were in the Championship at the time. And, you know, I thought I was going to take the job there, and then Coventry came back to me and offered me an improved and longer term contract. And because I'd been there and I'd worked so hard over the period, I felt that a sense of loyalty to them, but also it was a club where I had such great feelings for, and I wanted to build into a power force again. But probably in hindsight, I should have pushed more to go to Huddersfield at that time. But I didn't, and as a result of that and poor recruitment and obviously mistakes that I made also, I ended up losing my job.
Of course, you lost to Worcester City in the FA Cup.
Yes.
Was that what? I don't know how soon after that you lost your job, Stephen, but is that the kind of result then afterwards, deep down, you're thinking, I could be away now, realistically?
Well, I think that, again, the board of directors understood what we were trying to achieve. But when I talk about, you know, one of my real learnings at Coventry was that when I went there, they wanted me not just to transform the first team, they wanted me to change a lot around the academy. And I started getting my nose into too many areas. And I think when you're a manager, you can't upset people because you need their support, especially during the challenging times. And that's where you need a sporting or a technical director. They have to oversee all of that, the direction and strategy of that. But Coventry wanted me to do that. And my real learning was that I took on far too much and at times upset certain people because of that pace-setting style that I had. And it was real learnings. You know, I learnt a lot from my time there, and I understood then moving forward in other areas and other jobs, you know, that I had to stay in my lane a little bit more.
But you'd 3 years prior to that at Falkirk, I think 36 were you when you first became a manager, Stephen, I think. And as you were saying earlier on, you know, you developed players and there were some great results, great performances. I think your last game, I was at your last game, was it Hamilton? As Falkirk manager?
Second last game.
Second
I think
last
we won
game.
to go into the semi-finals of the Scottish Cup,
yes,
wasn't it?
That's exactly it.
Yeah,
Blair Alston
that's
had a
correct.
particularly good game.
Yeah, that's correct.
But then suddenly you were gone, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
It was a stunning move. But the experience you've had has been tremendous. You know, Coventry City alone was a tremendous experience.
An amazing club.
You know, in terms of what you had to get through. But then, of course, as a coach, you were at Scotland with George Burley, Terry Butcher. See, when you reflect...
Bad choice.
I was going to ask you, Stephen.
Bad choice.
Were you ever entirely comfortable in that role? Because I personally didn't sense you were.
No, and I think...
And you were still a player, of course, as well.
I was at Celtic at the time, which didn't go down particularly well, I think, with some of the Rangers. Because I think football's changed in the respect... When I look at the current Scotland side, there seems to be a great there's a great atmosphere within the camp. I look at the English squad, and there seems to be a great atmosphere within the camp. During those years that I've talked about, the early years, you know, there was a lot of rivalry. You know, there was a lot of, I won't use the word hatred, but there was that Rangers-Celtic thing where players were never fully, comfortable together. There was that real rivalry between them that never went away. It was just a different generation. It's changed now, and I see a change in it now. And at that time, being a Celtic player and being a coach, I don't think sat well with certain individuals, and I understand why. It might be a lot easier now than it was then But at that time, there wasn't an acceptance of that.
There was high-profile Rangers, but I mean Barry Ferguson, Alan McGregor.
Of course.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head who else.
David Weir was there.
David Weir.
Lee
Alan
McCulloch.
Hutton.
Alan Hutton. You know, and there was a real rivalry between...
And you're a Celtic player coming in.
Yes.
Did you sense right away there wasn't a total acceptance of you in that position, Stephen?
Do you know something? There was a journalist that phoned me prior to me taking it, and he said to me, I wouldn't take it if I was you. I think he was giving me a steer, and I chose to take it. The reason I chose to take it was that George Burley, that was a big thing for me, and it's not often you get the chance to go in as an assistant coach of your national team. I
remember speaking to Paul Hartley way back in the past, Stephen, and Paul thought the world of George Burley as a manager. At Hearts he thought he was outstanding, and you clearly felt the same. Yeah. So when George gives you a call to be part of his backroom staff, was that just too good for you to turn down ultimately?
It was too
despite
good.
Reservations?
Yeah, it was too good. And the other thing was that as a result of that, I was able to get my pro licence, because in order to be part of a national setup, the SFA had to put me through my various badges. So I was able to achieve that as well, which obviously supported the next stage of my career. But again, it wasn't the right choice, Derek. But it was a real learning curve for me, and these are the sort of things that have helped mould and shape what I am today.
I mean, you were 18 months in the role, but in all honesty, did you know fairly quickly, I'm not so sure about this?
So, if I'm honest, Derek, I spent probably 6 or 7 months in turmoil about whether I should stay or whether I should go. But I felt a sense of loyalty to George. I didn't want to let him down. He was going through the mill at the time, and I didn't want to make any difficulties for him. And yet, it probably would have been a good decision.
Was George aware of your concerns? Would you speak in private?
No, I didn't. I didn't speak in private to him about that. You know, it was something that I very much kept to myself, but I discussed it with my family because I wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation.
That must have been difficult, Stephen, when you're in the training, you're in the dugout for games, you're in travelling on planes, etc., and you're not totally comfortable with it. That's hard, is it not?
It was tough, but you know, I obviously tried to support George in the best way I possibly could.
Was there any obvious disrespect towards you? Or did you just get a sense? Was it a vibe, Stephen, you just knew?
I don't think the players, the other players showed any disrespect towards me. I just don't think it was fully accepted in certain quarters. And I understand that, Derek. I do, because that was the era. That was, you know, so much rivalry at that time. You even talk about the great England team of that generation. There was a lot of animosity within that, you know, rivalry from the Chelsea players, the Liverpool players, the Manchester United players. It was more like that in that generation than it is now.
But then I thought the awkward backroom appointment was Terry Butcher. You know, for obvious reasons, you know, the England warrior, etc. But then you've got Terry with a Rangers background, you've got Celtic players in the Scotland squad. Yeah. So was there, just as you're saying, there was an awkwardness because you were Celtic and there were Rangers players. Was it the other way around with Terry and the Celtic players? Did you sense?
No, not at all, because I think Terry had transitioned from being a player to a manager. Yeah. So I think there was an acceptance that he was a manager stroke coach. I was still a player at the time. So
we have Boozegate at Cameron House, Stephen.
Yes.
The immediate aftermath of a World Cup qualifying defeat to the Netherlands. How do you recall that now? And obviously Barry Ferguson and Alan McGregor were at the heart of that. You know, they've been drinking through the night, discovered in the morning. How do you recall that? What's your recollections of
that? If I'm honest, Derek, it's not something that I really want to go into now. And the reason I say that is that I respect Barry a great deal, and you know, it's kind of old ground for me. I came a little bit out of it as a scapegoat, and the reality was that I had done nothing really wrong within that. That's all I would say on it. But it's not really a subject that I want to get into again. I'm sorry about that.
Not at all. No, not at all. But clearly it's a regret.
No, it was a regret that you know, I had to go through that, and it was tough. It wasn't just tough for me; it was tough for my family as well. But you know, again, I always look at things in a certain way, and I do believe that all of these experiences, some good, some bad, have helped shape me.
361 games as a manager. You're 52, as you know, as was stated. What's your longevity as a manager? How long do you see yourself being in this game? Or longer term, do you see yourself getting back into, say, the sporting director or technical director?
I would like to do that one day. I certainly would. And the reason that I say that is I do like the planning and the strategies around football clubs. But I would like to be a sporting and technical director that would give the support to the manager, because I understand what they go through and the difficulties that they go through. So it is a role that I would really like to do in the future. How long I'm a manager, I genuinely don't know.
I mean, would you rule out this possibly being your last job as a manager?
I would never. The one thing I've learned, Derek, is I've made some bold statements in my time, right? And people don't let go of them. So I would say that I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It might be, but it might not be. This role might lead to something else. I just don't know what my future will hold. I came here because I wanted to help and build a football club. That's my intentions. But how long that lasts for, and if this is my last job, I genuinely don't know.
What would you want Dundee to become in your tenure? What is the ultimate aim for you?
The ultimate aim for me is that we become a club that can consistently perform in the top six of Scottish football. That's what I would like this club to become. I would like it to become a club that also could compete for trophies. Of course, the league's a long way off. Very difficult for that ever to happen. But, you know, I think cup competitions, you know, a team that would be vying for those types of things. That's what I would love to create. We're a long way away from that just now, but in order to get that, we need a number of windows, and we also need to keep developing.